Welcome to We Talk English, your favorite English podcast. We're excited to have you with us today. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay connected for regular English learning podcasts. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today we're tackling something pretty interesting, I think.
Oh,
The happiness industry.
yeah. Interesting.
So we've got some excerpts here from this text called pasted text.
Okay.
And we're going to try to figure out, can you really buy and sell happiness like it's a product?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it?
It is.
And this source points out right away how tricky it is to even define happiness,
Yeah.
what does that actually mean?
Well, they start with the dictionary definition.
Right.
Those emotions we feel, when we're doing well.
Mm-hmm.
From just feeling content to intense joy.
Right. Very straightforward.
Yeah, it's simple.
Mm.
But I don't know, does it really capture all the layers of happiness?
Yeah, it's definitely a starting point, I guess. But
Yeah.
happiness is so individual, right?
Totally.
What makes me happy might be totally different for you.
And that makes it tough to package and sell, doesn't it?
Epic.
But that hasn't stopped people from trying.
Not at all.
This pasted text actually mentions that McKinsey estimates the wellness market is already worth, get this, $1.5 trillion.
Wow, that's huge.
It's massive. And growing fast, too.
So is this about really helping people, or is it, I don't know, more about just a really good marketing strategy?
That's the question, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not just products anymore, right? It's happiness is becoming a thing we measure,
Right, like with the happiness index.
Yeah, exactly.
And have you heard of gross national happiness?
Gross national happiness. No, what's
Well,
that?
it's actually been used for decades in Bhutan.
Where's that?
Bhutan, it's a country in South Asia.
Okay.
And they use this idea that, progress shouldn't just be about how much money a country makes,
Interesting.
but also how happy the people are.
So, instead of just GDP, they look at well-being and all that?
Exactly. Things like, mental health, education, environment.
Wow, that's pretty holistic.
It is. But it still makes me kind of wonder, can we really just put a number on happiness?
Right. It's so personal. Yeah.
Exactly. And the source talks about how, when we start measuring happiness like it's GDP,
Oh.
then it's easier for, companies and governments to maybe try and manipulate things.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, maybe they chase these happiness numbers without actually solving the problems that are making people unhappy.
I see what you mean.
And speaking of companies, they seem to be all over this happiness trend.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
You see Buddhist monks giving talks at Davos.
Right. It's what?
And companies have chief happiness officers now.
It's a real job title.
I know. And they're even using brain scans to, pick who to hire.
It's a little creepy, right?
It is. So what are they really after?
Right? Is it really about making employees happy?
Or is it just about, making more money and, saving on healthcare costs?
Yeah, those are good questions to think about.
This happiness industry assumes we should all be happy all the time.
Right, that's the goal.
But the source is pretty clear that that's just not realistic.
Totally unrealistic. Perpetual happiness is an illusion.
Yeah, we're meant to feel a whole range of emotions.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
And trying to only feel happy. Well, that could actually be bad for you.
Exactly. It's pushing down all those other feelings doesn't make them go away.
Yeah, I've tried that. It doesn't work.
It just makes things worse, right? You end up feeling I don't know, like a failure or something.
Like you're doing something wrong.
Exactly. And the source actually says that instead of trying to get rid of those negative emotions,
Yeah.
we should learn to accept them.
Really?
Yeah, it's they're a natural part of life, right? Sadness, anger, even frustration.
It's they're not bad. They're just part of the package.
Exactly. And they can even help us be more creative, help us grow.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
It is, right? Think about artists and musicians. They pour their sadness and pain into their work, and it's beautiful.
They're not running from it. They're using it.
Exactly. It's happiness isn't just this one thing. It's a whole journey.
With all the ups and downs.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting because it challenges this whole idea that the happiness industry is selling.
So if it's not about chasing happiness all the time, then what is it about?
What is it about? Well, that's what we're going to explore as our deep dive continues.
I can't wait.
This is where things get practical.
Okay, let's do it. So we're not supposed to be chasing happiness 24/7.
Sounds exhausting.
It does. But then what's the point of this whole happiness industry? What are they even selling?
Well, pasted text suggests, maybe we've been thinking about happiness wrong this whole time.
Okay, how so?
Instead of like trying to get happiness, what if we, I don't know, grew it ourselves, cultivated
I
it?
like that. Cultivate happiness.
Yeah, so we're not always looking for it like outside of ourselves.
Right, not depending on some new gadget or vacation to make us happy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The source uses this analogy about buying stuff.
What kind of stuff?
Well, like sometimes we buy things because we really need them, right? Like food or, a warm coat.
Of course.
But then other times we buy stuff just because we think it'll make us happy.
Ooh, yeah, I've been there.
We all have, especially when, every ad is telling us this thing will make our lives better.
So true. It's like, buy this and you'll be happy.
Right. So it's about being, smarter about what we're buying.
And not just products, but also like ideas and messages, right?
Totally. We're bombarded with so much information all the time.
Okay, so how do we get better at this? How do we actually cultivate happiness instead of chasing it?
Well, the source doesn't give like a step-by-step guide.
Yeah, that would be too easy.
Right. But it really focuses on like connecting with what's important to us.
What truly matters?
Exactly. And it's not just about being happy all the time, remember?
We talked about that, right? Embracing all the feels.
Yes, even the tough ones.
So like building resilience is part of happiness too.
Exactly. It's about, learning to deal with the hard stuff.
Having those healthy coping mechanisms.
Yes. Nurturing our relationships, doing things we genuinely enjoy.
Not just things that give us like a quick hit of pleasure.
Right. It's about finding lasting fulfillment.
This makes me think about those times when I've pushed myself to try something new, like a new hobby or facing a fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't always fun in the moment, but looking back, those were the times I really grew.
I think that's a perfect example. Like, it wasn't always pleasurable, but ultimately it was fulfilling.
And that feeling lasts longer than, like, buying a new pair of shoes.
Exactly. The happiness industry is always pushing the quick fix.
Instant gratification.
Yeah, but real happiness, it's more about the journey.
The ups and downs, the learning, the connections.
Right, it's about all of that.
Okay, so we're being mindful consumers.
Mm.
We're embracing the full emotional spectrum. We're focusing on what brings us true joy.
Sounds like a good plan so far.
Anything else we should be keeping in mind as we, navigate this whole happiness industry?
Now, there's one more thing, and it's super important.
Lay on me.
Remember how we talked about happiness being, like, different for everyone?
Yeah, what makes me happy might not make you happy.
Exactly. And this is where the source says comparing yourself to others is, like, the worst thing you can do.
Oh, the comparison trap.
It's a trap. We're all on our own paths, right?
Yeah, we need to figure out what happiness means for us individually.
Exactly.
And we're back, wrapping up our deep dive into this whole happiness industry thing.
Lots to think about.
Definitely. But I feel like we're starting to see happiness in a different way,
I hope so. Less about the hype, more about what really matters.
Yeah, totally. So before we go, what's like the key takeaway? What should we all remember as we navigate this like happiness landscape?
Well, I think the big thing is you get to decide what happiness means for you.
Not let the happiness industry tell us what to think.
Right. Remember that thing from Pasted Text about, buying based on need, not just want?
Yeah, like practical stuff, not just impulse buys.
Exactly. What if we did that with happiness, too?
So figure out what we actually need to feel fulfilled.
Yeah. Instead of just chasing the next shiny thing,
Like a happiness budget, but instead of money, it's our time and energy.
I love that. A happiness budget. So we're making choices, right? About where we invest those things.
And then not letting ourselves get like distracted by all the noise.
Totally. It's about being intentional, making sure our actions actually line up with what we value.
And sometimes true happiness is in the simple things.
The everyday moments, the connections, that stuff is powerful.
This has been such a great conversation. I feel like I have a whole new perspective.
Me too. It's like we're not just along for the ride, We have choices.
We can create our own happiness.
Exactly. So to everyone listening, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep finding those things that bring you joy.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.
And again, thanks for joining us on We Talk English.